Welcome to the Film Board, the movie conversation podcast where we're reviewing the latest releases of movies that you've seen and want to talk about. My name is Ocean, and I'm the new host of the Film Board podcast. And on this episode, we are talking about a movie starring Simu Liu, Awkwafina, Tony Chiu Wai Leung, Meng Zhang, Fa La Chen, and Michelle Yeoh. Directed by Destin Daniel Cretton, we are, of course, talking about Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings.
Throughout my life, the Ten Rings gave our family power. If you want them to be yours one day, you have to show me you are strong enough to carry them.
You are a product of all who came before you. The legacy of your family. You are your mother. And whether you like it or not, you are also your father.
I told my men they wouldn't be able to kill you if they tried. Glad I was right.
He's just a criminal who murders people.
Be careful how you speak to me, boy.
I thought I could change my name, start a new life. But I could never escape his shadow.
My son, you can't run from your past.
Is this what you wanted?
You got this.
Thank you.
Today, I am chatting with JJ, one of the co-hosts from the Trailer Rewind podcast, and wanted to get his thoughts on this movie and share them with all of you. Welcome, JJ.
Hey, Ocean. I loved it.
Okay. All right.
That's my thought.
Okay.
That's it. I loved it.
Okay. Hey, well, all right, everybody. Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Film Board. All right.
Just getting started.
Just getting started. Okay. Good. Well, yes, I also enjoyed the movie as well. But I think before we really start getting into that, I think I wanted to just start with kind of setting the bar of what you thought about the movie going in. So without really diving into it, what did you know about the story of Shang-Chi beforehand, and what were the expectations you had of this movie going in?
So I knew very little. I'm a huge comic book fan. I have a ton, and specifically Marvel comics that I'm a huge fan of. And I really don't have any connection to Shang-Chi. That wasn't a title that I collected. It wasn't something that I knew about. So I knew very little about it. When they announced that Shang-Chi was coming out, I was kind of confused because it didn't feel like it was connected to the parts of the Avengers aspect of the MCU and the different things that I felt like they were creating. But, saying all that, I was excited to see something new that actually was rooted in a history about Marvel Comics that I didn't know. So I was excited for those reasons, but I was a little bit cautious too. And it was thinking that it was something that I just didn't know anything about. My expectations were, generally, I would say high because I'm such a fan of the MCU, but also kind of because of COVID, they were a little bit low because I just really am thirsty for Marvel movies. And I will say I did go and see Black Widow when it came out. And while I was so excited to get back into Marvel, I was disappointed that it didn't advance the macro story at all, that it seemed like it was something that was set in the past, in a past part of Marvel. So I was excited that Shang-Chi was maybe going to show us something new and start taking us in that new direction for the new phases. So those were all my expectations going in. It was sort of like generally low expectations about what I was going to get from the movie, but generally high expectations about being reintroduced to the new phases of Marvel.
The Black Widow movie did feel like it should have been made 5 years earlier.
Right.
Yeah. So for me, I'm in a similar vein. I was moderately familiar with the character of Shang-Chi. I also am a big comic book fan, but I live and died with the X-Men all through college and loved all that stuff. And so the old comic book that they came from was the Masters of Kung Fu, which I over the years had some of those. I gathered those, and as you know, if you collect comic books the way I do, you'll find that every now and again you'll go through your collection and you'll find these comics that you don't even remember getting. You don't remember when you don't remember getting them. You don't remember how they got there. Anything, right. And you open them up and you're like, oh, what's this? You don't remember the story anymore, and you kind of read them and check it out. So yeah. I read some of the Masters of Kung Fu. And when I first heard this, it took me a little bit to put together, oh, that's the character from Masters of Kung Fu. And so I was curious about it because when when they first announced it, I was like, well, how are they going to do that as a story? Because that is much, that is not as big as the Marvel Cinematic Universe usually is. It's a much more grounded story. He's really just a martial arts master that goes around and, gets into smaller adventures. He really felt more like a Daredevil, Luke Cage, like the Defenders, sure. Iron Fist, like that level of character. And so I was curious how they're going to give it the big Marvel movie treatment. And so as I saw some more of the trailers and saw that they were going to include the Mandarin, although they don't want to call him the Mandarin at any point, and the changing of the rings, because in the comics those 10 rings are actually rings on your fingers and not basically bracelets, right? Yep. And so the changing of that. And so when I saw all that and kind of saw what they were putting together, saw a couple of trailers, then my excitement level really went a lot higher, and then I started having great expectations of the film because it's the MCU movie, and really, even the bad MCU movies are still pretty good, right? Like the only one that I think you can make an argument is bad is like Thor: The Dark World. If you don't like that one, I get it.
I like that one.
That one had a lot of problems. I think Endgame did a lot to make that one better, but that one had some issues, right? But
I like it. I'm fine with Thor, and my kids and I were talking about after this that the MCU movies are like pizza. Even when it's a bad thing, it's still going to be pizza, so you're still going to eat it.
Exactly. So my expectations of it were, as I learned more about the film and, what they were doing with the character, my expectations grew really high. And so I was very much looking forward to this movie, even so much that I went out to theaters to go see it. And so I really did end up enjoying the experience for it.
I'm glad. It was a big thing for me too. We went and saw it at the drive-in actually, because they were allowing it at the drive-in, and it was a great experience to be there and to have, in-car audio and all that fun things to sort of make it exciting. And it was on the big screen at night under the stars, and it was everything that we wanted it to be, for sure.
Great.
I've been thinking about you. I'm gonna 고개 흔들어도
We are on Letterboxd. True Story FM's family of film podcasts are all part of the Next Reel's HQ page. Letterboxd is a great way to track movies you see, write your own reviews, and be part of a larger community of film lovers like yourself. Sign up for your own account today, and if you upgrade to a pro or patron account, use the account code TheNextReel with no spaces at checkout to save 20%. And if you're already an existing member of Letterboxd, this 20% discount works for renewals as well. The True Story FM family of entertainment podcasts are running a questionnaire to find out a little bit more about you, our dear listeners. What's working for you? What's not? And more. Please head to the True Story FM The Next Reel, and you'll see a big questionnaire button with a yellow bar on the right at the top. Just click on that and fill it out. We really appreciate the help. And as an extra bonus for that, one lucky listener who fills out this questionnaire will get a free year of membership. The Film Board has undergone a lot of changes in the past year, but we are working hard to continue bringing you thoughtful and fun conversations about big movies that have just opened in theaters. It does take some time and cost money, though, and to that end, we could use your support. Please consider becoming a member of the show and the Next Reel podcast to help us out. Members get access to member bonus episodes each month that only you will have access to. Members also get early access to every episode. You can join us before each recording of the Film Board episodes at our pre-show chat to discuss this movie and anything else on your mind in the world of entertainment. Members can also watch the live streams as we record our shows, so you could be watching us right now and see how the sausage is being made. You can even access those live streams from previous shows at any time in the future that you want. Members get additional channels of conversation in our growing Discord community, and they also get stickers. So let's face it, it just pays to be a member. Head to True Story FM TNR membership to learn more about our membership tiers. The most it costs is an expensive cup of coffee, $5 a month or $55 a year for a one-time payment. So let's talk a little bit about Shang-Chi and Legend of Ten Rings. At a high level, one of the things about this that is interesting, and to kind of give an overview of the story, is that it is in fact an origin story, right? And so it's interesting in something as mature as the Marvel Cinematic Universe is, that they are, when you introduce new characters, there is a piece of it where you're still going back to saying, okay, well, we need to introduce these new characters and provide a new origin story again, right? And so in this case, the origin story is following at the beginning credits. It starts with Shu Wenwu and his discovery of the rings, although they actually already has the rings, and then his use of the rings to gain power. And then over that course of time, then he gains power over the centuries, and then eventually meets the woman that will become the love of his life and the mother of his children. And then from there, we kind of start going into the story of Shang-Chi, right? Who starts out as Sean, which is a great name to hide from your family. This starts out as Sean, who's basically living in America with his friend Katie. They are both well educated, have a lot of promise and things they could do in their life, but post blip, they've decided, they'd rather just drive do valet cars to get money throughout the day, hang out with each other, unwind, sing karaoke at night, and enjoy life. And then eventually Sean's family comes back to then get him and bring him back, and his father wants to bring him back into the fold of the family to put his rightful place by his side to help rule, at least we assume, to rule the part of the Ten Rings and come back to his destiny. And then from there, Shang-Chi's journey then begins. He then comes to embrace himself and try to figure out where his place is in this world. And that's at a high level what's going on in this movie. But I think that, maybe the one way to just kind of break down the different pieces of this is to just talk about, Shang-Chi, the person, right? Like the character, like really what was his overall, arc and kind of what happened in his life and the decisions that he made along the movie, right? Because what are the movie's really trying to get us to latch on and care and cheer for this character, but then it's like, well, okay, well, who is this person, right? So we learn early on that, as a young boy, he has a bond with his mother, and his mother is gone, right? They don't really lay out how she's gone, but she's gone, right? And then when we really catch up to him as an adult, he's an adult, he's doing the valet driving, hanging out with Katie, with his friend Katie, and kind of having a life of kind of a slacker life, right? And then enjoying the slacker life, right? That's really what he's doing, right? And then that's what he's chosen to do. And so then at this point, in the movie and in the character development, it seems to be that we've been introduced to a character with a lot of promise, but he's really made a choice to not fulfill or live up to any of his promises. And so, at this point in the movie, did you find that you were, it's early on, so we're still getting to know, at that point, Sean, right? And, did you feel that, hey, he needs to, that it was that you liked what they were presenting early, or that you felt that he really needed to start trying to move more towards the promise that they really show you very early on that he has?
Well, it's interesting because really, we think of, with the timeline of everything that's explained to us, and this, you kind of learn this over the course of the film, that he's about 24 years old, right? So, right. And in this time, so much has happened in his life, and it is an origin story. And I think it's a lot of people have gotten to the point where they're a little exhausted with origin stories, especially coming from Marvel. But this is told in a way that it for me didn't feel boring at all, because it's slowly revealed to us over the course of these sort of flashbacks where we see so much happen to this kid at a very young age, and he was forced to do so much and to have a mindset of, his responsibility for things, his power, how he can wield his power to do things moving forward, to become an assassin, which his father kind of trains him to be. And then the concept of rejecting that power and finding a new way for him to go. All of this happened within the first 14 years of his life. And then you have that slacker piece that he goes on to for the next 10 years. He finds his own way. He finds a different way of living. And then the actual sort of real time of when the movie's happening, is him being sort of put in the place to choose between those two lives and figure out the way to integrate who he is as a character into his life that he's chosen for himself. And I think as an origin story, it makes sense. It didn't bore me at all. I was really excited to watch him on this path. And I feel like the way it's revealed, if you want to talk about his arc, is that he had always embraced his power. You see that even when he was living that slacker lifestyle, he was still getting out of bed and doing push-ups every morning. So I think he still understood the importance of keeping his mind, body, soul, his purpose very pure. And I think that it all works for me, and it's very consistent with the character to go on this arc and then to embrace the sort of supreme power that he gains as he is reintroduced to all the training and all the magic, really, that was a part of his life before leaving it behind.
For me, part of that, which you got to at the end there, the pivot of where he's kind of being reintroduced. So he's living the slacker lifestyle, and then when his father's henchmen come to get really the amulet, right? They're really wanting the amulet around his neck. They're not, they tangentially want him, but he gets a little quick clue that he and his sister both deserve whatever they get, right? So then he now feels that his sister's in danger.
So that's Razorfist that says that. Did he say they do deserve it or that they don't deserve it?
I thought he said that they do deserve it.
It happens so quickly. And I mean, this is jumping a little bit ahead of the story, but when my kids, Razorfist was their favorite character in the entire movie.
Oh, okay.
They thought he was so great. And they liked him so much that even when he was all bad, they were saying, I really hope he turns around and turns good. So then when he does make the turn, and it's kind of him who leads the turn to get everybody fighting on the same side, I wondered, did I miss that line? Did he say they do deserve it, or did they not deserve it? Because he kind of ends up fighting with them at the end.
Yes, he does. But I think that's, the fighting with them part is, there's a lot of self-interest there, right? Because at first he wasn't. And then he realized, oh, wait, if we don't fight together, we're all going to die. So self-preservation trumps any other.
So when he says that, do you feel like, does he hate the kids? No, hate is the wrong word. He's just kind of an executioner, right? So why would he say that the kids do deserve it? I don't know. The line was tough for me. I wasn't sure exactly what.
Yeah, I think that he's kind of bought into and not sold himself is the wrong term, but he's bought into, and he's really a part of the Ten Rings organization. And he feels that these two children who had this as their birthright to be a part of this and be a part of the greatest organization in the world and could lead it, and they left it behind. Yeah. You deserve what you're getting. You turned your back on all of the greatness and wonder of what this is. And so I think that's
traitors.
Exactly, that they're traitors, and
they're
that's
disloyal.
Yes. I think that's really what he's going for, as far as that they do deserve it, right? But also I think that even part of that sequence is, it's an interesting choices that I think that even Shang-Chi makes, right? They took the amulet, and he thinks his sister is in danger. And at no point in time do they really stop and think, hey, yeah, they sort of beat him up a bit, but they weren't really trying to kill him, right? They were just trying to take the pendant off his neck. And honestly, had he handed the pendant over, there's an argument to be made, they would have just walked away, right? That they weren't. I guess. Their mission wasn't to kill or harm Shang-Chi. And then when he finds out they're going to go to his sister, and even when you see that, when that sequence starts to take place, when you're introduced to her, which we can gloss over that for a second, but even their interaction with her, they're not trying to kill her, right? They're just trying to take the pendants from them. And so I think that it's also an interesting choice of where he views it, Shang-Chi views it as if they're in danger, and now he has to go save his sister, who he has.
Right, he becomes a hero.
Right, he has to save his sister, become the hero. And I think that there's part of it for him is, he's maybe trying to finally reconcile with, look, I need to own up to what I did because he left her behind. Right. And so he left her behind, and he thinks that she is finally reaching out because she wants to then reconcile. And right. And he's open to it and everything. But with his guilt, he's open to it. And he has a lot of guilt, and he wants to then go, build that relationship back up, and then discovers that his sister is a far different person than he expected. Right. That she's, running an underground fighting ring. Right. And doesn't need saving, didn't try to reconcile with her. Right. And reconcile with them. And so now, I think the interesting part of it to me now is you kind of have the juxtaposition of what the characters are trying to do with their overall choices and how the fast pace of the movie is going, right? Because there doesn't really give you enough time for him to stop and think, okay, why am I here? Was it a setup that I was brought here? Are they trying to then kill us both? Are they really looking for something else? And am I really able to reconcile with my sister, who doesn't really seem to want to reconcile with me, but now I think I'm ready to do so?
The one thing that makes me question that is that someone sent him the postcard,
yes.
Right? Like I agree with all of that, and I hadn't thought of that, but I loved the pacing of the film. I thought the fast pace, then again with giving us the exposition through flashbacks, actually worked in this
Absolutely.
movie. At no point did the flashbacks become annoying to me. And the reason why I bring up the postcard is because they wanted them together.
Yes.
For some reason. And I think so it's kind of like a mixed bag of, yes, they wanted dependence, but the dad also kind of wanted to get them back.
Yes.
Right? Like he wanted them to be there for his grand sort of plot to try to resurrect his wife or free his wife, however you want to look at it. But yeah, I agree. I don't think they wanted to kill them, but I think I think that it led to a lot of great fight scenes either way.
Oh, it did. Well, it did. I think it led to a lot of great fight scenes because I think the dad even challenges his henchmen to say, "Hey, try to kill my son. I dare you.
Right.
You're not going to be able to.
You won't be able to.
Right?
Yeah.
You won't be able to even if you want to. Right? And so I think that yes, and while I didn't mean to even imply that the pacing was in any way a negative. I thought the pacing of it was really great. It was really great that it was fast paced, that you weren't able to sit there and think through, hey, maybe they should make this other decision or that decision. You're kind of just going with it, the flow of things, as you're discovering these characters. But yes, I do think that it is the postcard was coming from the father because he wanted his children together. Because when you think about it, what he's doing there is if he's going to resurrect their mother, he's trying to reunite his entire family. So it does make sense to bring them together and then to then bring them in, right? But
right.
The other aspect of it with continuing along with Shang-Chi's journey, right? So they get to the point they're then captured by his father, and then they hear the story, the plot line, right? And it was interesting to me how that they seem to be kind of willing to go along with all of it until that they're both the siblings are like, oh, we're gonna go save our mom. Okay, that's great. But then if then when they hear about Ta Lo and what's gonna that they have to go there, they have to find it, they use the M list to figure that out, and then the father says, well, if they won't give us their mother, that we're gonna then just basically burn the place down. And that's where the line gets drawn, right? And then I thought that was an interesting choice of where he seemed to be fine with like a rescue mission, but then any type of Shang-Chi seemed to be fine with the rescue mission, but then at this point that's where the father's plan goes too far. I guess I found that juxtaposition a little bit interesting in that, yeah, he grew up his whole life and was being trained to be, ultimate killer, and that, yes, he did kill the one person, but then maybe the mental training didn't kick in because it makes logical sense that he should have the same attachment his father has. Like, why doesn't he want to destroy the whole village to save his mom, right? Because he shouldn't care about these things. And so it seems to be that piece of his training did not take as a child.
And that follows with the arc, right? Because he first tells us that he did not kill the assassin. He and then he confesses that he had.
Did, yes. Yeah.
But you would lead then to believe that his remorse or his shame is what led him to leave. Yeah. So that shame of being a killer, of being that person that he didn't want to be, even though he was trained to be that, is what put him in this different mode. So, of course, taking a look at potentially killing a bunch of innocent people is very consistent with where his character has been going in this arc, and says, no, we can't do this. Even if our intentions are good, even to get our mom back. I killed someone that was her killer because I wanted some sort of good feeling, but it didn't do that for me. It gave me this shame, and burning this village down or killing these people is not going to do it either. I felt that was very consistent with his character for sure.
Really, and at that point, that's when we start to go into the, for his character's journey, right? At that point, he's done okay, I've now discovered who I am. I've now confessed who I am to my friends. We've, encountered the what we at this point deem to be the big bad guy, which is his father. They get captured and then they escape, right? They escape, and then when they finally do get to Ta Lo, at that point, it seemed to be that was really the arc of self-discovery for them all, right? For all the main characters, but even with Shang-Chi specifically, not only, and his self-discovery to me felt different than other characters. And then this is kind of the way I felt different, was that his self-discovery was really more about discovering his abilities and discovering new abilities and new things that he could do, and then trying to finally reconcile his place in the world, right? Because I think that up to this point, he's really kind of been reacting in two modes. One, he's running from any destiny he feels that he has or anywhere his places are in the world. And then two, after that, he just really is kind of doing things reactionary to protect people that he cares about, right? But I think that when he gets to Ta Lo, that's when they start to pivot a bit and turn into, okay, well, A, let me understand a bit more about my abilities, but then B, try to make a decision about, in this world, now that I'm understanding my place, who is it that I'm going to be? And what is it who am I going to be? What is my role going to be in this universe? And what are my choices in that? Right. And I don't know. And I felt kind of conflicted about it. One, I felt, hey, this is great that he's being able to figure these things out. But then two, it became, well, I started thinking, does he, and I want to know your thoughts on this, did he have a choice? Right? Like, could he have chosen another path? Right? Because he really seemed to be that he is basically destined to be, in effect, the hero, whether he wants to be or not.
The story sets us up that if he chooses not to be a hero, if he were to take that choice, that really, by the end of the movie, they say that if he were to take that choice, the world would end.
Yeah.
Right? Because the one who dwells in darkness would gain enough power to destroy the world.
Yeah.
So ultimately, what that says to me is, no, he does not have that choice. That it is his birthright, but it's also his inevitable placement in the universe for him to take this role. And I think he realizes that, that he can channel all the power that he had through his training and turn it to something more positive. And that is symbolized by the changing of the color of the rings as well, which leads us to a whole different aspect of what's going to happen in the Marvel Cinematic Universe going into the next phases. So of course, there's a little bit of Deus Ex Machina here in that the story is telling us that we need this guy for the next stories. But ultimately, this story is that if he chooses to not accept the mantle, the one who dwells in darkness. Did he have another name? The Mega Soul Eater? I don't know.
Yeah, they called him a Soul Eater, but yeah, I think the one that was his primary name. Yeah,
dragon face weird thing would have destroyed the planet. And I think so. I think it's a good point for you to bring up. Did he have a choice? No, he needs it for the story, but also the world needs that hero as well. So he was always meant to be that person, I think.
Right. But then does that lead, and this may be more even in terms of the future and why I was thinking about it this way, was, so if he feels that he has no choice, he seems to be, then he's following along that path. But is he committed to that path? Or is he someone that can be, his motivations can change because they're not really, there seems to be that he hasn't had the agency of choice yet, right? That he's been given these tasks and he's doing the right thing, right? And he's doing the right thing. Like, he doesn't want the world to die. That's great. He doesn't want everyone to, his choices seem to be driven by, there are people that I care about that if I make another choice will die, and I'd like that to not happen, right? But for family, right? But that doesn't lead into the greater good that is being, as far as the future of the MCU, right? Like, will he have these same feelings about, either humanity as a whole or people that, outside of his immediate family? Like, if his immediate family is safe, but everybody else is in danger, does he care?
Well, so now I think that's really interesting that you bring that up, because I hadn't thought about it. And I don't think they tell us. I don't think we know from this movie. And from what I've read about the comics, he's one of the more, not by readers, but by heroes. He's one of the more disliked characters in the Marvel comic universe. And part of that is because when he embraced his power, he also embraced the organization, which we see that as they move on, that the sister takes control of the Ten Rings. But Shang-Chi in the comic books, being as secretive and as powerful as he is, he doesn't really let the Avengers or anyone else know that he's taking over the Ten Rings for the side of good.
Right.
He just says he's taking it over. So he becomes this ultra powerful crime boss that his dad was. So people don't know that. So it's really interesting that you bring that up, because there's a lot of assumption going in, especially when we get to the place of, you know, Wong showing up and sort of recruiting Katie and Shang-Chi to some greater cause, that he is altruistic in his response. But I think you're right. I don't think we know. I think he's always been motivated by the people that he loves and cares about. So it's going to be interesting when he's faced with different decisions and he has this great power that's both who he is as a person and these ancient relics of power that he now has at his control as well.
Pivoting to Shu Wenwu, who is the father. Ostensibly he's the Mandarin, from comic books, but that pivoting to his character, and this is part of why I was thinking about this and curious about your thoughts on it, because when I look at his character, right, thematically for him, we talked about his search for power early on, and he has an organization that goes out and sprawls out across the world, and he's super powerful. That's great. But really, then he finds his real purpose in family, right? In the caring and protection of his family, right? Now there is the symbolize, the symbol that we touched about earlier, and we'll dive deeper into that, about when he and Lee get together. She's going to leave Ta Lo. He's going to put the rings to his side, and he will then grow old, and they will raise a family and be together. But when she is killed, then he puts the rings back on. But he's now he's really more focused in the training of his son to then ultimately become and take the rings and take the power that he has. And so, but part of his arc, I feel that his motivations from the beginning are inward facing, right? The initial arc is all power, and it's his power, right? That's all he cares about. Then he meets someone else that he finally feels is worthy to share his orbit with, and then all he cares about is her, and then their children, all also very much inward facing into his family, right? And even his motivations from then on, like understanding that his son, I think he knows, did go through with it, but then needed to have this 10-year journey to lose weight. His son did kill his mother. I think he knows his son did, that Shang-Chi did, in fact, kill his mother's killer, and therefore, completed the mission he had, but understood enough about it. And honestly, this is kind of a father's love, right? All right, my kid did this thing, but that really messed with him. So he's going to need some time.
He was 14.
Yeah, exactly.
He was 14 years old.
He was 14, yeah, exactly. He's going to need some time to process that, right? So I'm going to give him that. Yeah, 10 years. Yeah, I'm going to give him that time to process all this before we bring him back around, right? And that he does that, lets him live his life, and then decides to bring them back. But then even when he finally brings them back, I needed this time that A, I was lost, but B, I've now found a way to bring their mother back, and so that I'm going to do this to reunite my family and bring everyone together. And that is what I'm using my power and resources for. And so, again, it seems to be that the motivations in that case are mirrored, right? Shang-Chi's motivations throughout the movie really deal with how did this affect the immediate family and people that he cares about. And his father is really the same thing, right? Even though his father is more being an antagonist, where he is creating the events that are occurring to the family members. But at the same time, that seems to be really where he's going. And so then it makes me then start to question, well, how different are they? And B, it made the father a much more interesting character to me, because I feel that he wasn't just some evil guy trying to, get more power and rule the world. He really was just more focused on his family. Yeah.
And he was manipulated. He was manipulated into believing that he could have the family, that pivotal point in his life that he wanted at that pivotal point in his life. And that's why he became an antagonist, because he thought that he should do anything that he could to gain that aspect of family that he wanted. And he had the power to do so, because of the rings. So that was interesting. His arc is interesting, and he is a very complex character, which I think is wonderful. People don't expect that necessarily from a Marvel movie, but I think there are definitely some wonderful complex characters in this story.
Yeah. So then, since we touched on it earlier, why do you think he put the rings back on?
That is a really good question. Why does he put the rings back on? I think it's a nature of humanness, fear, and vulnerability. I think I think he didn't think that he could live without his wife. I think when he was left alone, he thought he had nothing. His children were small, right? His wife was killed. He wasn't there, and his children were small. And I think he felt the only way that he could protect them, the only way that he could live life, is with the power that he had gained before he met his wife, because he had nothing. He was left with nothing. I don't know if that's, I don't think everyone might have that opinion. I think it's set up in the movie for you to believe that it's a much more nefarious belief than that. But if I want to follow that character arc and believe what they're trying to tell us about Wenwu, I think it's that. I think he felt that he needed the power to get back what he had lost.
Yes. And so, but with that, then does that help or hurt the story? Because that makes him more sympathetic of a character. He's not complete evil. Right. And so does that,
but he is a child abuser. I mean, we should, you're right. He's not completely evil, but he does think beating up his son makes him a tougher guy. So he's like, what, the Adrian Peterson of the world, in that, like, I'm going to get myself a stitch to make sure that my children grow up and get strong. No,
work, didn't
you're
it?
right. It will
work, right?
See, and that's right. So he's an ends justify the means kind of person.
Okay,
so
right.
You're right.
Yeah.
His heart was in the right place, but for me, his methods were not okay. So it's hard for me to excuse him from that. I think his turn at the end, when he finally realizes that his mindset, his belief, his mixture, his complex mixture of lust for power and love for his wife, had led him down a path that actually endangered reality, including his family. I think that turn made him more sympathetic for me than at any other point in the movie, because I think he was either, what did we say when we were watching the movie? He was either just evil or he was deluded. And I think he was deluded through most of the film. And I think that does make him sympathetic if you can stay objective through the things, through the child abuse, which is hard for, I think, a lot of people. So trigger warning, child abuse, children in peril.
Part of this movie does lean into and embrace, definitely with Asian culture and Asian stories. And it is very common Asian trope in stories that the great warrior has a childhood where he has a lot of, he's hitting the scene of Shang-Chi punching the wall, or that big wooden post that he punched with the holes in his bloody knuckles and all that and everything. So it's a very common trope that you would go through that, or, you have that hard training of that tough task, the tough teacher who, occasionally he cuts him a bit on the cheek, and then they, there's a lot of brutal fighting, and that is a common theme throughout, like, the Asian stories about this is how you then bring up and train a world-class warrior.
And I don't think it's just Asian. I mean, we look at films, recent films that I've really loved, like Whiplash, with a movie, about jazz drumming and talking about, that whole concept of having that intense teacher that's going to challenge you in ways that border on abuse. It is that debate of whether that is the way to find greatness in the world. And I think there are sympathetic parties on both sides of that debate. Yeah, it's interesting about Wenwu. I like the character because I think you could argue both his love and his evilness at the same time.
Yes, you could. And then one of the things too I appreciated about him in this as a character, which helped me out with the movie, is he is set up as the villain. It's an arguable point: is he the villain, or is it the the one that's going to eat everybody?
The one who dwells in darkness.
Thank you. The one who dwells in the one who dwells in darkness, who's like, the dragon with the the Starship Trooper monster bug face, right? So
was it that, or was it the Stranger Things face? It was one of those faces.
Yeah.
Or maybe it. It was it.
Yeah,
I don't know.
There was a whole bunch of just they were just throwing stuff on the wall with him, just being like, we're just gonna make something
big flying monster with tentacles and a flower face.
Exactly. Yeah, with a bunch of teeth. Just throw in every weird, creepy thing and just put that on his face and call it good, right? So even though he's set up as a villain, one of the things that I appreciate with movies, and this is where I think this movie also succeeds, is I like the villains being smart, right? And he does figure out ways, he knows what he needs to do with the pendants. He figures out what that is. He knows when the time is to then strike, and he's able to figure out ways to get to his ultimate goal. His ultimate goal is to free his wife, which he thinks right up until the end, that's what he's doing, right? And then once he realizes that that's not what he's doing, and then that's bad, he does, to me, part of his turn is recognizing, okay, I've done a bad thing, and a lot of people can die, right? But his last defiant act, in effect, is to save his son. Right, because the one who dwells in darkness is going to eat his son. He saves his son, and then he allows himself to be sacrificed in this. Because one of the things I think don't recognize at the time, but then see at the end, the fact that the father died was partly his choice, right? Which makes you then wonder: is it that once he realized his wife was truly dead, and he felt that his son was actually ready to take his rings, that he felt that he had done everything he needed to do in life,
which is foreshadowed, right? When we talk about the rings, and he says, "You have to prove to me that you're tough enough to wield these."
Exactly,
and he did. That's the moment that he did.
Right, yep. Exactly, and he did. And so then, in an interesting way, to me, part of it is that he has the arc and he is somewhat the villain, but then it seems to be that everything he's doing is just to train his son to get to this point, up to and including sacrificing his own life, right, to give his son enough motivation to say, hey, I'm going to finally take it. Because had his father still been alive, I don't know that Shang-Chi would have taken the rings had they been handed to him. If he was like, I'm now going to go off and live the rest of my life here, take these rings. I don't know that Shang-Chi would have taken them. He'd have been like, no, there was
no purpose to it.
Right.
You're right.
No,
I hadn't thought about that.
Yes. And so that his last act, Wenwu's last act is to say, this is the last thing you need to be ready. And I'm going to sacrifice my life for you. And then you go on and become the great, warrior or person or whatever, great, whatever, enter your adjective there, right? Great, whatever that I know that you can be. And so I guess that's, I guess maybe I'm making somewhat of a case of where it's like, well, that Wenwu wasn't really evil, just maybe misunderstood.
Yeah. Well, and he's deluded. That's the thing. He's being manipulated through the film. So, and I think the film did a great job of leading us down both paths, that he could be evil or he could be deluded. And until we see his entire arc, I don't think we know. And then we have the ability to make the decision for ourselves. So I think that's one of the strong points of this film, is that it lets people be the complex people that they are.
Yeah, I agree. And pivoting from the complex to the more straightforward. What were your thoughts about Katie?
So I'm going to be totally biased about Katie because I love Awkwafina so much. she can do no wrong for me. That's not true. That's not true. Yeah. I have seen a couple movies where I wasn't super happy with, but ultimately, she's such a likable person on screen. I'm always excited to hear what she has to say. And I think the character was a wonderful foil for the intensity and the depth of the Shan and the Shang-Chi character. I think it works perfectly. I think she has her own little mini arc that goes in here. And I think they give us sort of small plates, some tapas ways of understanding who Katie is as a person and how she can fit in. And the fact that she's brought along for the adventure at the end, has me excited. Yeah. Whether or not, because I'm not familiar with the comic, whether or not that's a real character from the IP or not, Awkwafina is the biggest star in this film today. I mean, that you could argue that Michelle Yeoh is legendary, right? But I mean, of today, stars that are out there today, Awkwafina is the biggest name in this movie, and for her to be included and to be brought along, I think Katie's going to be awesome. I think Katie's going to be fun to go with. But it sounds like you thought she was a little bit thin. That they could have done more with Katie. You think? Well,
I don't know that thin is the right term. I mean, she did the comedic foil. Her arc as a whole, she's maybe more consistent throughout, right? So at least, but definitely the first 2/3, right? So I think she is there really for a couple purposes. One, that you do need a comedic foil. Two, I think that she introduces things in the movie to reflect kind of, nods to Asian culture. Her family, I think that scene of her family is very important, in terms of just giving various nods to Asian culture, and things that, the different experiences of Asian culture generationally, like how the people that grew up in China kind of how they think, how her parents think, like in how she thinks growing up. She was American. Her parents seem to be that they were the first generation to come over to America, but are still American, and still have a little bit of ways where she's, born in America, fully American, thinks more American than, her Chinese grandmother. And then, even like little nods, like the scene where her grandmother pulls Sean aside and is like, hey, when are you guys going to get married? Right. I'm like, well, that's it's how a grandmother would act. It's like, hey, what's going on here?
Exactly.
Right.
Right.
Then all
Totally
that makes sense. And so I think that she's important for that in a lot of ways, and also to kind of bring us along through the journey. And all of that is to say, I will preface, I love Aquafina. Hilarious the things that she's bringing to the table. But okay, so I just want to make sure I'm couching that with that. But
throw it out there.
Yeah, throw that out there. Yeah, she's awesome. But that, and that, so her arc really kind of stays that she's the kind of like the character who's in wonderment and amazement of everything that you're seeing to this point, brings some reality to things, saying, okay, hey, I know you don't want to talk about your past, but he just, had a sword come out of his hand and chopped the bus in half. Maybe we should have a conversation, right?
We got to go into this.
We got to go into this. Yeah. So, and things, that, and a way for the, have a character react on screen like the audience, which is, hey, this stuff isn't normal. So maybe we should address this, right? But I think her arc really kind of improves. At Talo is when her arc really starts to then have a change, where she then starts to really kind of grips with, okay, I've just been, since the blip, wandering about doing nothing because I feel that nothing matters. So why bother? And that I've now, through this, really through the simple act of archery, feel that I've then found, because if you think about it, that's really all it is. She just is like, I'm going to use archery and maybe focus a little bit of time and energy in this. And it's a little bit of time because I think that training sequence is a day, right? But in that time to say, hey, maybe if I focus on a thing, doesn't matter what that thing is, that it'll help me focus the rest of things in my life.
And I think they do a great job because they set it up. They set it up that she's scattered before we get to that. And then they also reiterate how ridiculous it is that she learns that she does it in a day, right? I mean, they make fun of themselves in the convention of what happens in the story, but it's important for the story. And it doesn't bother me because they address it. They don't expect us to believe that she could do it. She thinks it's crazy too, but she did it. Like, that's the thing. They set the table well, and they provided us a wonderful meal. And I'm really happy with everything that her character did in the story too.
Yeah, I agree, and I'm curious. I do look forward to what they decide to do with that character in the future. Does she grow more, or do they try to keep her in that same lane where she's still just kind of in the wonderment, or is she going to grow more and then kind of start to embrace more of this role as being drafted at the end, right? Because when Wong at the end, when he comes and grabs Shang-Chi and says, hey, you have the rings, come with me. And he goes, and you too. That implies that she's then going to be brought through this journey as well. And so she will have the opportunity to either grow into this character or she will just be continually, standing in amazement.
Exactly. Very excited about that.
The one character that I had the hardest time wrapping my mind around what I thought about her overall arc was the sister. So was Xia Ling, right? And so that's kind of one of the things that I was even looking on, stuff online or stuff like that, trying to see what people thought of her arc, right? Because I really wasn't sure if I liked her or not at the end, right? And so I was kind of curious what your, like, how did that character come across to you? Was she because you kind of have the option of like, was she an abused child that overcame her abuse to then, grow to be, grow up to make something of herself? Was she someone who just needed an opportunity to be great and eventually would be? Was she just early on planted the seeds and just all around she's or is she the real villain, right? Is she the real, head of the 10 rings that's going to turn it into a real terrorist organization or, something like that? Like, how did you feel about her? What
Marvel's doing in this is consistent with what it's doing in all of its properties right now. So I liked her. I like what they did with the character I find the character very shallow, but I like what they're doing to set us up with her. And they're doing the same thing with a number of different characters and different properties that we saw. If you watched Falcon and Winter Soldier, you see a similar type of setup with the Taskmaster. Is that what it was? No.
The Taskmaster's
not the Taskmaster's from Black Widow. So what the idea that there's this crime boss that's in a different city, and I'm forgetting what the name of it was at this point, but that is potentially a good character and potentially a bad character. You also get that with Baron Zemo, that Baron Zemo helps them through that story, but he also has this sort of grand plan to eliminate heroes in the world. And now they're setting up all of these people that are the head of these organizations that have connections to good, but also have connections to bad. And the reason why they're doing that from a story perspective is that you can use them in any way. So you have this sister that we end up disliking at different points and then rooting for at other points and all this stuff. And what she does at the end is embraces the head of this crime organization. So how do we expect her to show up in the future? Marvel is going to have it so they can have it any way they want to. And they can write it as that complex story of both protagonist and antagonist in any way they want to do it. And I think they're doing that with a lot of the properties that we see here.
Yeah, I just can see that. I left the movie with my impression with her as that they're setting her up for
Power Broker.
The Power Broker is the one from
Falcon and Winter Soldier.
Right, but yes. I honestly thought they were setting up for that show or some other show, like maybe the Power Broker season 3 and season 2 is her. Like it seemed to be like right, but it seemed like I was like, oh, they are setting up a good television bad guy. This is a good series that whatever it is to kind of stop her, right? And do that. But I just felt that like. So that's what I think they're doing for the character in the future, which I am excited about. But then in the movie, it seems to be that, well, did she change or was she just always this way? Right? Because when they first come across her, she's upset with her brother. She's upset with her brother. They get in the fight, seeing everything in the ring, and then when she realizes immediately they've been set up by the postcard, she's out. Right, she's gonna out and escape, and then she decides somewhere along the line. I think she decides she doesn't want Katie to die. Right, I think she was fine with her brother. I think she knew her brother would be fine. Then she didn't want Katie to die, so then she kind of comes and helps out and does that a bit. But then throughout that rest of the arc, is she trying to turn to be a different or better person, or is she smelling, hey, I have an opportunity here to grab more power?
I think it's both. That's the reason of the complexity. And the other thing is, if he's 24. She's like 21,
yeah, 20
or 21. Like these are very young characters to be finding themselves, right? This idea.
Yeah.
So I think it's both in that I don't think she knows yet. I don't think she knows in the same way that I didn't know if Shang-Chi is going to be someone that's going to be a hero if he isn't motivated by his friends and family. I think the same thing. We don't know if she just wants power, that she's her father's daughter too, or if she actually is going to be an altruist going forward. All we know now is that she is in control of a very powerful army out of China in a compound that looks pretty cool with all of the art that she put around it. So.
Well, yeah, it does. And also she's segmented out her assassins. I think they have different levels. Because I think the inner circle, which was all female, I think that's intentional. I think she's like, no, these are the ones that are going to protect me. And you guys on the end, you're the ones that are going to go in first. You're the fodder.
You're the pawns.
Exactly. You're the pawns. And these are the ones that are going to really come out. So then, was there anything else about the movie, the performance-wise, set-piece-wise, or anything else that really stood out to you?
The big thing for me was the camera, and was the biggest thing that I didn't really expect coming in. There are some great fight scenes in Marvel movies. Black Panther has some great fight scenes. I think the Endgame fight scenes towards the end are really amazing, but nothing was like this. And really the way that the camera is used, and this is Bill Pope, who's, the director of photography for The Matrix, and they really pulled in a great cinematographer for this movie. But one of the things that I've always loved since comic books have been started making comic books into movies is when they do a good job of creating frames that you would have seen in comic books. And I think back to the original X-Men movies, the original X-Men and X2, X United, where you see Singer actually creating frames that you've seen in comic books before. And it was so wonderful, but they were static. They were these homage images in the past for those comic books. What they did with this movie, with Shang-Chi, is that they had those same frame thoughts, those same creative frame ideas, but then Bill Pope really brought them to life. And the fight scene that made me realize that, I was loving all the fight scenes, everything.
They're great.
But the one in particular that really stood out to me is when the dad and the mom are fighting in the forest, and they're taking these long, sweeping, moving shots and kind of wrapping the camera around and giving us the sort of calm view of their faces. And it's the kind of thing where everything is so well lit, everything is so well shot. Mm-hmm. Every fight scene in here was exciting in the way that it made me want to show my kids Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, because I was like, this is the good kind of action movie. And I think it surprised me so much, and I was so happy. And then, of course, when I came home and looked up that it was Bill Pope, it makes so much sense. He's such an innovative camera director of photography that I'm so happy that he is taking this turn with Marvel, and I think it only means good things. I think it's really exciting to see that, and I'm so happy with all the different shots and all the different ways they use the camera in this movie.
For me, one of the things with the fight scenes that I noticed also was that, actually taken going from the end of what you said at the beginning, the sweeping scenes when Wenwu and Lee were fighting, that it did very much remind me of, like, there's Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, reminding me of Hero, or House of Flying Daggers. If you've seen those, like, sure, that sweeping where it is a beauty that overshadows the violence of what is potentially happening, right? Yeah, I mean, yeah, and being able to then visually display it in that manner. And then also, I think that the thing that I thought was unique amongst the Marvel part was that they brought in, one of Jackie Chan's stunt coordinators, and there was a lot of those fight scenes. It looked like, it reminded me of Jackie Chan, right? Where it looked like, hey, this is what it would really look like if you're really fighting these people, because Jackie Chan's really doing those stunts, and he's really doing it. And so, and I think and Simu Liu is really doing a lot of these stunts and a lot of these action fight sequences. And so how it looked, that made it look. It added a level of realism to the fantasy, right? That it's still fantastic, and that you're not gonna regularly take on 30 guys on a skyscraper on the side, with electric,
what a set piece.
Tasers,
on a bamboo scaffolding on the side of a building.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, what a set piece! It was amazing. And Simu Liu, I mean, he's a star.
Yeah, absolutely.
I recognize him, but I didn't get it. And wow, his personality, everything that was here. I want to see so much more of him now. I'm super excited and so glad that he's part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. This is really exciting to have an actor like this be introduced, and a character like this be introduced with that actor as well.
I agree with everything you're saying there.
Thanks.
So, I guess wrapping up this movie, I guess, given the, I guess the one thing I think about is when I talk about what I think of movies as a whole, right? There's, we can, as far as what I think of movies and rating and deciding what movies are, really, it's like, well, I like to think of them also in terms of, well, given the expectations that you had before going in, right? How did this movie live up to or not live up to that? Like, how did it compare to what you thought it would be?
It very much outperformed the expectations that I had. I mean, I had those sort of middling things, right? A low expectation of what I was going to get from the story, and a high expectation of being introduced back to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I was happy with both. It overperformed in both those things. I think the story is exceptional here. I think the execution of it is really powerful. It's one of the better films, one of the better Marvel films on execution. I think it shows how much better Marvel is at making movies than when they started. And not that the first ones were bad by any means, but but there was a complaint that every movie was the same. And I think people are going to come to this thinking that it's just another origin story. It's going to be the same, but there's so much different about the way that this movie is executed that I think it deserves watching. And then in terms of how it's connecting back to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, we got to see Wong. We got to reintroduce the fake Mandarin, which I think was a wonderful callback, a super exciting callback that connects it to Iron Man 3. I mean, there's all these different aspects of it that make it connected, the connecting tissue to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And now with the lead up to what's happening in November with the Eternals, I think these rings have something to do with that. I think when they are examining the rings and saying that they're more than 1,000 years old, there's something about these rings that make them actually more powerful than what we witnessed in just this film. So it outperformed on both of my expectations for it, in the low expectations that I had and the high expectations. So I was very happy with it.
I found that I feel now remiss that yes, we did not mention the wonderful performances for Ben Kingsley and his co-star Morris, the chicken pig. And which
with wings.
Yes, exactly. With my son immediately wanted to have as a pet, and,
Yes.
and I was like, well, we can't find that in stores.
Faceless pig with no wings.
So, exactly.
With wings.
Yeah. So, but yeah, so and then it was great with that with the connective tissue there. I found that going into it, my expectations were already really high. I thought that the trailers were amazing. I expected that the story would be well done. I have a high bar from Marvel now, right? And so I find it's an interesting dichotomy that I find with Marvel movies now, in that they are all very well done, and I expect them to be very well done. So if they are like this movie, very, very well done, and really, I think, for the most part, there's one quibble I think you can have with the end, with the way the climax works, the dragon fight and the dragon fight scene. There's, I can see a quibble there, which even I was kind of like, I don't know about this one. I felt like I was honestly channeling Tommy. Like, I don't know about fake things fighting fake things.
Sure.
So there was some of that, but that aside, I expected it to be really great, and it was really great, right? And so then it becomes a thing of where, all right, does that mean that it's, because it's always fun to see a movie and be like, oh, this exceeded my expectations. But for the Marvel Cinematic Universe, my expectations now are high. They've put out too much good product for me to think that, oh, well, this next movie may not be as good. It's like, no, you have, over 20 movies of good. So That's all I'm expecting now. Right. And so I think that they are able to slowly, incrementally raise the bar. I think that, part of the bar raising for this is I definitely understood the importance and meaning of Black Panther, and seeing a Black superhero on screen. The superhero on screen looks like me. I fully understood and got that, and the emotional impact of that. And I was curious, and I actually asked some people, like, well, so is Shang-Chi like your Black Panther? Like, for some of my Asian friends, like, my Chinese friends, is it the same? And so, and I'm finding a lot of ways that it is, right? And so I think that they've raised the bar not only with that level of inclusivity, but also creating it needs to be a good story. It's not enough to just have a superhero of color. It's like, nope, this still needs to be a good story. And I think that the movie was, in fact, was great. It lived up to not only being a good movie, but also added these extra layers of inclusion and allowing you to go different directions with not only the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but even some other minor characters, right? To allow them to expand.
I totally agree. Yeah, I think it was wonderful, and because I didn't know the character before, I didn't understand why it was necessary or how it was necessary to the whole Marvel story, but it definitely fits in, and it fits in a perfect way, and I'm really happy they made it because of that.
Absolutely. So, taking all that praise, how does that translate to you in terms of, if people are saying, well, that's all well and good, Ocean and JJ, how many stars do you give it, right? So, like, in that vein, with the if you're on Letterboxd, how did this movie come out for you?
So I gave it 4 out of 5 stars, which for me is very high. I really enjoyed the movie, and I gave it a heart. So with a like, when I rank all of my Marvel movies, this is like in my top 5.
Oh wow!
Top 5. Yeah. So top 5. Wow. So this is it's a big deal in that. My first one would be probably the Guardians movies are my favorite. So really? Those are my top 2, and then probably Endgame and Black Panther, and then this movie. So I think that's like my top 5, and all the other stuff. I mean, they're great movies too, but this movie is so is special in terms of execution for me that I think it belongs up there.
Oh, nice. I rated the same. I gave it 4 stars and a heart. I think that the ending, if you're being objective, that ending with the dragons fighting thing, that was kind of, that part I wasn't a big fan of. But the rest of it, as far as...
But I think, so interestingly about that, even though it's fake things fighting fake things, I think the dragons fighting each other looked more realistic in this than the CGI Black Panther and Killmonger fighting each other at the end of Black Panther. That looked more fake than this did, which I think is an interesting contrast when you think of it that way. And interesting that both of them ended up with these sort of CGI fights at the end, where they were both so rooted in great story and realism leading up to it. But yeah, so I didn't have so much problem with the dragons, but I can understand why you would.
Yeah, no, well, and now that you say that, I hadn't thought about that, but you're right. It did. You could see the CGI in the Black Panther Killmonger scene at the end of it. So,
right.
Yeah, so
it was noticeable.
It was very noticeable. So, but then again, part of that could be because of the context. Like you know what real people look like fighting, but dragons kind of like
dragons could be CGI.
Yeah, right, yeah,
when I see CGI, when I see my dragons out the window,
right, exactly.
They look CGI to me too.
Right, exactly. I'm not. Yeah. So, since I didn't grow up with dragons around, I can't compare it to anything. So yeah, but especially for that, I thought it was a great movie. It was very entertaining, fast paced. I was not bored at any point. Loved the different themes of what they were communicating as far as the family dynamics and the characters, and the fact that it is not only an origin story but also set up for other things. I have to give it some thought as far as my top 5 with MCU movies. I mean, easily I can say top 10, but for me, and honestly for me, like the number one is Infinity War. To me,
nice.
the Infinity War is better than everything. I love Thanos.
You're an Empire Strikes Back fan then too. You like that sort of middle unsettled thing. So like strangely enough, I'm a Return of the Jedi. Like I like the wrap up at the end. So I get what you say.
No, I'm further afield than that. I don't think that Infinity War is unsettled. I think Infinity War is settled. I view Thanos to me as the hero of that movie. He went through and made ultimate sacrifices. He had a plan and a goal and a vision, and made the ultimate sacrifices to get to and achieve his goal. Right?
Are you watching What If?
I am watching What If, yes. And
did you see the What If where T'Challa was actually Star-Lord and Thanos becomes one of the good guys and he keeps talking and everybody keeps calling like, that thing about genocide. And he's like, but it was efficient.
Exactly. Yes. Which is funny. I found I hated that part though, because I was like, nope, Thanos needs to be like in the MCU, Thanos needs to be the way he is. In the comics, he's a bit different, but in the MCU, right? I'm like, no, they built the Thanos that I absolutely love. So that for me is number one. Right. And then after that, it's Winter Soldier and Civil War. Those 2 Captain America movies are just so great to me, especially in that they are, especially Winter Soldier, because Winter Soldier is one of those movies where like I use that as the gateway for anyone that doesn't like MCU. I'm like, here's your gateway drug. Right, to get to the MCU, because that movie, the fact that they're superheroes isn't relevant. It is a nice, taut espionage thriller movie, right? Every now and again, Captain America will do a couple of things where you're like, a normal person can't do this, and Bucky does a couple of things where a normal person can't do this. But other than that, it's a straight ahead, great story. And I think, and to me, that was the first time in the MCU when they really did that, where it was a story first, and it was just like, well, we're just going to throw the superheroes in it, right? Not just, I have superheroes, they can do some things, and I'm going to make a story with those things in mind, right? And so Winter Soldier to me was definitely where they really pivoted to where they could figure out other things they could do with the MCU. This movie was great. I give it 4 stars with a heart. Loved it. Recommended. Look forward to seeing it. I'm sure I will see it at least a couple, 2 or 3 more times. Look forward to watching it more. And go
to the drive-in. Oh wait, no, it's not going to be there next week. But anyway, you should do the drive-in.
That is definitely one of the ways I would like to see this. Is in a drive-in.
Awesome.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining me today to talk about Shang-Chi and the Legend of Ten Rings. Anything else you'd left to say before we sign off?
Well, we mentioned that I'm with the Trailer Rewind podcast. That's with me and Steve Sarmento. We do it weekly, so it shows up in your feed if you're subscribed to it as an individual show. What the idea about Trailer Rewind is kind of like that old school thing when we used to go to video stores and you were like, what should I pick up? What should I watch? Steve and I are kind of acting like the guys that work at the video store that you ask what are recommendations for. And it's all about films that are available on streaming services for you today. So check out Trailer Rewind if you want that. If you want to find me on the internet, I am on Instagram at Fighting 17s, Fighting 17s, and that's a throwback to my first favorite movie ever, which is Backdraft, the Fighting 17th Fire Regiment from Chicago. So anyway, that's how you can find me there, and check out Trailer Rewind if you can.
It's a great movie. Great movie, poor Axe. So,
love it.
So yeah.
We go.
Yeah, you know what? I say that a lot in life in general. Those are great. That's great team building right there. You go, we go. Yeah. Backdraft is awesome. All right. Well, so don't forget to join our online community with fellow movie lovers. And please go to thenextworld.com/Discord to learn more. And again, if you're not already in there, please consider supporting the show. To learn more about that, go to thenextworld.com/membership. And please don't forget to do the stuff that you're supposed to do with podcasts. Please rate, review, subscribe, and of course, listen to them. But perhaps most importantly, share. Please let any of those movie lovers in your life know about the show. The best way we have to get more people listening to the show is you. Thank you very much. Members, watch out for our bonus episodes just for you later this month. Coming up next month on the Film Board is the movie Dune.
My planet Arrakis is so beautiful when the sun is low. Rolling over the sands, you can see spice in the air. The outsiders ravage our lands in front of our eyes. Their cruelty to my people is all I've known. What's to become of our world? Paul.
A boy.
Hey, Duncan, can I trust you with something?
Yes, always. You know that.
I've been having dreams about a girl on Arrakis. I don't know what it means.
Dreams make good stories. But everything important happens when we're awake. Look at you. Put on some muscle?
I did?
No.
We are House Atreides. There is no call we do not answer. There is no faith that we betray.
Smile, Gurney. I am smiling.
The Emperor asks us to bring peace to Arrakis. House Atreides accepts!
I know you. There's something awakening in my mind.
You need to face your fears.
Come with me.
Thank you, everybody, for listening. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.